1.12. The concepts that we have discussed right now are auto-boxing, auto-unboxing, generics and corrections, as well as for each loop. One thing, while asking some questions in some written tests, I have seen like they'll ask they'll go for a collection. This one's like they'll go for a list. They'll add some elements 10, 20, 30, 40. This one's like they'll add 10, 20, 30, 40 is being added to the list. What I'll do is then they'll ask what is the value printed, whether it is a compile time error or runtime exception, okay, or it will print 10, 20, 30, 40 or none of the above. Why it is a compile time error?
Actually, the each object.
Huh?
The list is the object. The object.
But if you use a list in a generic way, if you use list in a generic way, what happens? Let's consider like we have a list. Now, for each and every iteration, one integer object will come. Can I typecast integer object into int? No, not typecasting. Can I convert integer upper class object into int primitive? No. Conversion of integer upper class object into int primitive is possible or not in JDK1.5? Yes, because of auto unboxing. This will not give a compile time error in JDK1.5. Now, because of that reason, now because let's consider like I'm not going for integer int, let me go for integer. Now, will give a compile time error? Will give any compile time error? No? But you have observed now that I have used the keyword for each. For each keyword doesn't exist in Java. Okay? Just the loop that is enhanced for loop is called as for each loop. But even for enhanced for loop, the keyword that should be used is for. For each keyword doesn't exist in Java. The enhanced for loop also called as for each loop. But that should not be represented using for each. Okay? Some interviewers as well as written tests will ask this kind of questions. But for each keyword doesn't exist in Java. Even for each loop, we use the keyword for. This for loop is called as a enhanced for loop or for each loop. But the keyword for each doesn't exist. Then once enhanced for loop is over, the next one is varargs. The next enhancement in JDK 1.5 is varargs. Varargs. Varargs means variable number of arguments. It's a short form. Just it represents that variable number of arguments. That means if the number of arguments is not fixed, then it is a variable number of arguments. In which blocks arguments are possible? In which blocks arguments are possible? Methods, constructors. In any other case, only methods and constructors can have arguments. No other blocks can have arguments. Only methods and constructors can have arguments. So, varargs can be applied only for methods and constructors where arguments are possible. Now, let's write a very simple. Let me write a class separately. We'll go for a folder SRC. And let me go for a folder classes. Let me write a new class, new package. But if we give 1.5, if you give 1.5, then dot also will be considered as a package structure. That's why I have given 1_5 dot demo. This I have created a new class and a new main method within a new package. Let me try to compile the application. compile, go to the classes, just execute the Java command. Sorry, what? So now the application is executed. Now let's see how the varargs will be. Let me write a sample method. Let me have an integer. Okay. Let's consider like I'll input some values and I need to get the average of the values. Okay, I may enter 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure what are the number of arguments it might be. But whatever the number of arguments it might be, the method should handle that number of arguments. Let's have a variable number of arguments. Okay. Now this is the syntax of varargs. Data type space 3 dots, after 3 dots identifier name. Let me make it static so that I need not to create the object. Just data type varargs will have a syntax like data type space 3 dots. After 3 dots we should give the identifier name. Okay, and to call this test method I can pass any number of integer arguments. Let me pass 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this I am passing variable number of arguments. Now let us see whether the same method can accommodate all these calls or not. Okay. Now I have compiled the application. It was compiled very successful. Okay. Go to the classes, execute the application. Now, how is it executed? For the first call, for the first call, test method is executed. For the second call, third call, as well as the fourth call, fifth call, and the sixth call. 0 to 5 number of arguments. For all the test methods, the same method is executed. Why the same method is executed means? Why the same method is executed? Just because this test method can accept variable number of integer arguments. It's even 0 to n. Okay? There is a requirement that the number of arguments that we pass to a method is not sure. Okay? We don't know what are the number of methods that we are passing to an argument. Okay, then we go for varargs. Okay, let's consider like we have any number of subjects. Let's consider like technologies. If you go for Naukri of Monster, are we sure that what are the number of technologies that the user adds? Let's go for Monster. You'll upload the technologies like I know Java, I know J2EE, I know Ajax, I know some X, Y, and Z. Okay? Is it sure that all the users have the same number of technologies? No. It's not sure that all the users have the same number of technologies. One may have 3, one may have 10, one may have 100. So, to accommodate all the combinations, okay, a single method is enough so that the method arguments, see, whatever the technologies that they add, now, is there a possibility that one technology is string and one technology is integer? Is there a possibility that one technology is represented as a string and another technology is represented as an integer? No, there is no possibility like that. All the technologies will be of same type. So, then we can rather than making separate methods with different signatures, we can make use of a single method with variable number of arguments. Okay? In that kind of situations, this varargs will be useful. If the number of arguments are not sure at the time of development or at the time of compilation, the number of arguments are changing at the runtime, okay, and the data type of the arguments is the same. If the number of arguments is changing at the runtime, but the data type of such arguments is the same, in that case we go for varargs. If the number of arguments changes at the runtime and the data type of such arguments is the same, then we go for varargs. ARR is the name of the identifier. See, even varargs is also a data type, right? So it is a integer type. So any variable in Java should have a variable name. Okay? Even varargs is also a data type. Even varargs is also a data type. The data type will have an identifier name. Okay? As we go on, you can understand it better. Okay? And now, this varargs, the varargs will act as a array of the specific type. The varargs identifier will act as a array of the specific type. Now, do we have a length as attribute in array? The identifier of the varargs will act as an array of the specific data type. Now ARR will act as an array of the integer type. Now just I am printing the length of the array. Okay, just I am printing ARR that length. So go to SRC, compile the application. Go to the classes, execute the application. So, in the first method, number of arguments is 0. Second, 1. Third iteration, 2. Fourth method called 3. Like that, the number of arguments are being increased. Okay? The number of arguments are increased as well as the length of this array is also increased. Okay? This ARR, this vararg identifier will act as an array of that specific data type. And this vararg can be iterated even using for each loop. just I. And let me go for a star mark. So it will differentiate between multiple method calls. Okay, just this star line will differentiate between multiple method calls. Now we can use, since it behaves like an array, since ARR, which is a vararg identifier, behaves like array, we can use a for each loop on a vararg identifier. Go for SRC, clear the screen, compile the application, go to the classes, execute the application. So, hello, in the first iteration 0 arguments, in the second iteration 10, 1 argument, third iteration 2, fourth iteration 3, like that. We can use a for each loop iterate the varargs. Internally, varargs will behave like a array. Okay, array of that specific data type. It's not even primitives. We can have a varargs of any data type. Let me go for a derived data type string. So now let me pass a. Like this, we can have any number of varargs of any data type. Sorry, we can have vararg with any data type. It's not that vararg should be only of primitives. Varargs can be of any data type. Go to SRC, compile the application. Sorry, I'm using for each with a integer where the data type is string. Now let me use string. Compile application, go to the classes, execute the application. So, the first iteration A, second iteration AB, third iteration ABC. Like this, the varargs can be used for any data type. It's not even primitive. We can use varargs even for derived data types also. Okay? Now will it compile successful? Will it compile successful? No. Why it will not compile successful? Okay. There is a varargs, right, with string. There is a varargs with string. Then why it will not compile? What the compiler expects means, the compiler expects the first argument should be integer. Once the first argument is integer, from the second argument onward there can be any number of strings. So this will not compile. This will not compile just because the first argument is not integer. If the first argument is integer, then from the second argument onwards any number of strings are allowed. Okay, now can I compile this? Can you compile this? Yes. Just because once first argument is integer, after the first argument, even zero number of string arguments are also allowed. So this will compile successfully. Again, sorry, int I is duplicated. Just compile, go to the classes, execute the application. So, the varargs, if there are varargs as a second argument, if the varargs is the second argument, okay, then what happens is, we should provide the value for the first argument definitely, and as a second argument, we may or may not provide the values for varargs. Understood? Definitely here, the first argument should be integer. And for second argument onwards, we can put any number of strings. That's our wish. Understood? Now what happens? What happens? Compile error? What do you think it is a compile error? We have integer varargs. To call this method, minimum one integer is required. Just because the first is a fixed. First is not variable number of arguments. The first argument is fixed. So that minimum we should pass one integer. After one integer we may pass any number of integers. Minimum one, maximum there is no limit of integers. Understand? That's how. Here we need to pass minimum one integer as a first argument. Then for varargs, we may pass any number of arguments. Now, let me pass. What is the value printed? It will be 3. What are the number of arguments that I am passing? 4. The number of arguments that I am passing is 4. Why the size is printed as 3? Just because the first argument, the first parameter that I am sending will go to I, and 3, 4, 5 will go as an array to varargs. So only 3, 4, 5 will be in ARR. So the array length is 3. Understood? Like that it will be. Okay. First it satisfy the fixed arguments. After the fixed argument, whatever it might be, it will be varargs. The size is 3. Understood? Now, what's the output printed? What's the output? 4, comma 0. But this is a compile time error just because in a method or a constructor, maximum only one vararg should be there. In a method or a constructor, maximum only one varargs is possible. If there are more than one varargs in a method or a constructor, then it is a compile time error. There are more than one varargs in a method or a constructor, then it is a compile time error. Maximum only one varargs should be there. This will be definitely a compile time error just because maximum only one vararg should be there in a method or a constructor.
The sound will be
Hmm?
sound will be wrong. Is the data type different?
Hmm?
The data type is different.
Now the data type is different, right? One is double and one is int.
What is it?
Any data types. See, if it is not allowed for double and int, it will not be allowed even for string and int. Even double and int are different data types. Okay? It's not the case. Any varargs of any type, whatever the type it might be, at maximum only one vararg should be there in a method or a constructor, irrespective of the data type. Irrespective of the data type, maximum only one vararg should be there in a constructor or a method. This will definitely give a compile time error. So it is giving a compile time error. No? Now what happens? 3. This also will be a compile time error. Sorry, this will not be a compile time error. The length will be, just I was in another thought. Length will be 3. Okay? Just because first we are passing a double and then after we are passing 3 integers. Okay? Now, what's the value? 0. Okay, once we pass a fixed number of arguments, after that we can pass any number of variable arguments. Okay? Like that it will be. No? Just see.
The variable number of arguments should be
Why do you think like that? Why do you think like that?
because if we write because we don't know the exact number. So actually in the double so the integer also like that and also which path are it should be possible. Will the ambiguity.
So, let me make it a string. Is there an ambiguity? Is there any ambiguity now?
But it is failing in the integer case.
Huh?
But it is failing in the integer case.
But why you are telling that it is typecasting and all?
The rule should be the general one.
Why are you telling the typecasting? Just let's have a clap for him. What the reason that he told is very correct. Let's have a clap, man. Who is whatever. Just because we cannot expect the number of arguments at front. We can expect 0 to n number of arguments at the end. And then if we give any arguments, and it is 0 or 10 or 20, it can accept. But at front, how we can expect what are the number of arguments? It cannot be expected. So the very rule is varargs should be only one for a method or a constructor, and that should be the last argument of the constructor or a method. Okay? The varargs should be only one, that too it should be the last argument. The varargs should be only one for a method or a constructor, that too it should be the last argument of a method or a constructor. So that this will give a compile time error. The varargs should be the last argument. Okay? The varargs should be the last argument. This is being a compile time error. Just because the varargs is not the last argument. Now let me move this and let me keep it here and let me move this. Now will it compile? Will it compile? Will it compile successful? No, just because first we should pass the fixed argument. If the first we pass the fixed argument, then we can pass any number of variable arguments. Whether we pass the values for variable arguments or not, it will not give a compile time error. But if you don't pass values to fixed arguments, then it will be a compile time error. Whether we pass values to variable arguments or not, it will not give a compile time error. Variable argument doesn't expect a value mandatorily. We may give or we may not give values to variable arguments, but for fixed arguments we should pass some value to call that method. Okay, so this will compile and execute it successfully. Okay, but if you don't pass this fixed argument, then definitely it will be a compile time error. Okay, but if you pass the fixed argument and if we ignore the variable arguments, now will it give a compile time error? No. We can pass 0 to n number of variable arguments. Understood? That's how the variable arguments will work. Now, can we write like this? Can we write like this for a main method? Yes, definitely. Just because for main method also we can have variable number of arguments, 0 to n number of arguments. So we can have varargs even for a main method. Varargs can be there even for a main method, just because main method can take 0 to n number of string arguments. Okay, this will complete the varargs. The next enhancement in JDK1 is static imports. Static imports. No. Let's consider that I have a static member in one class. Let's consider that we have thread. How will you set the priority? P1 dot. Am I right? Am I right? Is this the way to set the priority of a thread? Is this the way to set the priority of a thread? Forgot everything? The thread class has three static constants: max underscore priority, min underscore priority, norm underscore priority. These final static constants are used to set the priorities. Okay? So, what is the data type of this max priority, min priority and norm priority? The data type is primitive int. The values are 1, 5 and 10. So, now this is how I can set the priority of a thread. Now, let's consider like I am setting the priority of 100 threads. What I need to do? I need to again and again use thread.max priority, thread.max priority, thread.max priority, thread.max priority. Let's consider like I have 4 threads. I am setting the priority. Okay? Now, is there any boilerplate code here? In this 4 statement, is there any repetitive or is there any boilerplate code? Yes. What is the repetitive code? The thread dot. That is repetitive. Okay? That is repetitive. The static reference or the class reference or simply the entity reference is repetitive. Okay? Now, do we have any possibility to avoid that repetitive entity reference? Means using static imports. Okay? Let me import this static member using import static This is the syntax of static imports. Import space, static space, the class name along with the package structure, a dot, the member. How the normal import statement will be means? Let's consider import java.util.list. So here java.util.list. Java.util is the package structure. List is the entity name. Here, static import will be import space, static space, the package structure, the entity name dot, the member that we need to use in a static way. Okay. Now, if you want to use this max underscore priority, I need not to go for again and again thread.max underscore priority. Directly I can go for max underscore priority. I need not to go for the repetitive boilerplate code thread dot and thread dot. Directly I can go for max underscore priority. We should use this static imports only when if it is used at multiple places. If it is used only at one place, static imports is not useful. If the same static member is used at multiple places, then only static imports is useful. So now max underscore priority can be used even without the reference of the class name. And why static imports are used means to avoid the boilerplate code of references of the entity. Okay? To avoid the boilerplate code of the entity references. Now, if you don't use static imports, what we should do? We should write this repetitive code: thread dot, thread dot, thread dot, and thread dot. This is a repetitive code. Any repetitive code in software terminology we call it as a boilerplate code. Boilerplate. Okay? So, to avoid this repetitive code, here the repetitive code is the reference to the entity. To avoid the boilerplate code of entity references, we go for static imports. To avoid the boilerplate code of entity references, we go for static imports. And if we are making use of static imports, make it sure that the name is not a conflict with the current class. If we are using static imports, make it sure that the name doesn't conflict with the current class. Let's consider that okay. Now if you print the value, then what is the value printed? What's the value printed here? 10. Just because max underscore priority is statically imported from the red class and the max priority value is 10. So the value printed here is, compile application, is compile, go to the classes, execute the application. The value printed is 10. Now let's consider that we have then what's the value printed? Then what is the value printed? Will it give a compile error or will it print the value 10? What's the link? It's an incompatible type, found string required int. Okay? Wherever it might be, first the local ones will be preferred. Local variable will be preferred for attribute. Attribute will be preferred when compared to static input. Okay? Local variable will be preferred when compared to attribute. Attribute will be preferred when compared to a static import. Okay? Like that the hierarchy will be. So the compiler is considering it as a string, and string cannot be assigned to a integer. So we should avoid such naming conflicts. The naming conflicts between the attributes, okay, and the static imports. We should avoid the naming conflicts between the attributes of the current class or the local variables of the current class and static imports. Otherwise, we get unexpected results.
And sir, error is giving the income variable, right? But actually, in the math value, the already defined one. So it should be given error.
See, why is it giving incompatible type? Normally, max transfer priority is imported in a static way, using static import. But we have an attribute here with name max transfer priority. What is the data type of the max transfer priority available as the attribute in the current class? String. So, what I told first we will give a preference to the current class members. So, it will go for this. Now, the max transfer priority is considered as a string. We are referring string to an integer. This will be a compiler. Understood? So, we should avoid such naming conflicts between the static imports and the variables of the current class. That's what we told. Okay. Now we can import using static imports. We can import the static members even using star. We can import the static members even using star. So all the static members will be imported. All the static members will be imported and directly can be used. All the static members can be imported and they can be directly used. So, can you use like this? Is there any current thread method? Is there any current thread method in the thread class? Now, is it a static method or non-static method? Current thread method, is it a static or non-static method? I'm not getting the answer at least from 80% of the guys. That's what you are practicing, right? Okay, I told many times to access the current thread, we execute thread dot current thread. And if you use a method or attribute through the class name, definitely it is a static member. So now the question here is, can we add static methods through static imports? Right now we have seen static attributes through static imports. Now can we use static methods, okay, through static imports? Let us see whether we can use static methods through static imports or not. Now, is it compiling? Yes. Let me go to the classes. Execute the application. Now what is the value printed? current thread dot get name main. It's printing the name of the main thread. So can we use static methods using static imports? Yes, we can make use of static attributes as well as static methods also with static imports. With static imports, we can make use of attributes as well as methods. Using static imports, we can make use of attributes as well as methods. Now, what is the output? What are the values that are printed in the system.out.println? Hello? 10? Main. Is there any other answer? Definitely it will be a compile time error. Just here the static import. What are the members that we have imported? Only current thread. So, only current thread will be imported. But did we import max underscore priority? No. So, just that I did not find the symbol max underscore priority. If it is star means, then all the static members, attributes and methods will be imported in a static manner. But if we specify the name, then only a member with that specific name will be imported. If we specify the exact name, then the member with that name only will be imported. The remaining members will not be imported. Understood? So if we give star, then all the static attributes and static methods of that particular class can be used in a static import manner. Okay?
So is there any runtime effect if we are using any specific method or attribute or if we are using star? Is there any runtime effect?
Runtime effect in the sense, it depends. Like if the class has the method or attribute with the same name, then it will affect.
In that case, we are going to give every time by using star. No need to specify.
That's what I'm telling. See, if you want to go for one attribute and one method, then what you will do? You write two import static statements, one attribute and one method. I told in the first class, not in the first class, in the very first class itself, the import statements should be very specific, so that whatever we want, only that should be imported. Star is only the way of importing all the things, and star should be used only when we are using most of the things of that entity. See, let's consider like if you import java.util.star, then all the entities of the util package will be imported. But if you are not using all the entities, it's not required. In maximum number of scenarios, we won't use all the collection interfaces and all the collection classes. So, if we do that, what happens? The performance of the application will be reduced like anything. So, the import statements should be very specific, so that whatever we use in the application, only that should be imported. But star is the way where we can import all the things, and star should be used only when we are using many of the entities for normal import or many of the members for static import.
So it is reducing performance.
Definitely performance will be reduced if unnecessary import statements are there. Unnecessarily multiple entities will be loaded into the application. Okay?
So, sir, if there is 10 entities we have to import, so it's better to write 10 times import.
Definitely, even if there are 100 entities,
Yeah.
better to go for import with individual statements only. Let's consider like the package contains 100 entities. If you are importing 95 entities, in that case you should go for star. Okay? If you are importing or if you are using most of the entities of the package, go for star.
So for writing import reduce performance or writing star reduce performance.
Writing star unnecessarily will reduce the performance. Writing multiple import performance, writing multiple imports will not impact the performance. Okay? But if you write star unnecessarily, then that will reduce the performance. Okay? Okay, this is about static imports. Static imports can be used both for attributes as well as methods. Just in order to go for static imports, we should go for import space, static space, the package structure, dot the entity name, dot the member or star. If you give star, then all the attributes and all the methods will be static imported. Okay? If you give a specific member, then only the member with that name. Only the member with that name will be imported. Okay, and this should not be rearranged. It should be import static only. If you give static space import, then it will be a compile time error. Let me give star so that I can use all the members. Okay. So it is giving a compile time error. So static import is not recognized, but if it is import and static, then it can be recognized. This is a valid syntax. Okay? Static import should not be used. Import space static should be used. Understood? And this will complete the static imports. Now, how many are completed? What are the things that we have completed? Autoboxing, autoboxing we have completed while discussing wrapper classes. And then we have discussed generics in collections while discussing the collection API. Now we have discussed for each loop as well as varargs as well as static imports. And the remaining 6 or 5? 5. And the remaining 2 are enums and annotations. The 6th one is enums and the 7th one is annotations. Now, in the very first class of my discussion, I have given the definition of a class. What is the definition of a class? Class is one of the entities in the object-oriented programming language. What are the other entities available? Interface, enum. Did we discuss about all the entities? We have discussed about classes. We have discussed the features about interfaces. The third thing is enum. The third entity is enum. Okay? Enum is also an entity in a object-oriented programming language. Enum is also an entity in an object-oriented programming language. Now, let me have a simple example which shows how the application behaves in an unexpected manner if you don't use enums. Okay, I'll show the first application. Okay, which behaves in an unexpected manner if you don't use enums. Okay, now let me erase these things. Shall I erase this? Now, Let me have two static variables. Okay, I have some final static constants. Let me go for final. To represent constants, we use final static attributes that we have discussed already. We use final static attributes to represent constants, and the final static attributes, okay, only for final static attributes, the naming convention is that they should be in uppercase. The final static attributes should be in uppercase, and if there are multiple words should be separated by underscore. But for normal attributes, how it will be means the attribute name. Let's consider like row count. It should start with lowercase, and from the second word onwards, it should start with uppercase. This is a normal variable convention. But for final static variables, the convention is the whole thing should be in uppercase, and if there are multiple words, that multiple words should be separated by underscore. So, since in the third class max underscore priority is a static final attribute, it is like this: max underscore priority. Just because max underscore priority is a static final attribute of the thread class. In the same way, if we write any static final attribute, it should be in uppercase, and if there are multiple words, they should be separated by underscore. That we have discussed already. Okay? And now, while writing some business logic, I'll write this condition. Now, will it be compiled and executed successful? Will it be compiled and executed successful? Yes? Definitely yes. Just because the compiler will verify the database, the data types, and runtime environment will verify the values. The compiler and runtime environment will not verify the names of the identifier. The compiler will verify the data types, runtime environment will verify the values. The compiler or runtime environment will not verify what is the name of the variable. Okay? So, now Leave over the compiler and runtime environment. Is this a correct way of comparison logically? Leave over the technical things. Logically, is it a correct way of comparison? Logically, is it a correct way of comparison? Let's consider like I have born on some Tuesday. Let's consider like August 15th, 1987 is Tuesday. And I have born on Tuesday. Since I have born on Tuesday, will my month become February? As per this logic, will it become February? Yes. Just because if the day is Tuesday equal to month underscore February, then it is you are born in February. So, am I comparing two compatible things? Logically, not technically they are compatible. Technically both are compatible just because both are integers. But logically are they compatible? No, logically they are not compatible just because one is a month and one is a day. One is day of the week, another is a month. Technically they are compatible. As per the compiler and as per the runtime environment they are compatible. Just because both are integers. If both are integers, compiler will allow to compile as well as the runtime environment will allow to execute the application. And this will successfully executed and the thing that is printed is true. If block will be executed. But leave about the technical things. Logically, is it a correct code? But is the compiler able to restrict that? Is the compiler able to restrict that months should not be compiled with days? Is the compiler could able to restrict? Okay, the compiler could able to restrict or not? Does the compiler restrict that the months should not be compiled with days? Is that restriction provided by the compiler? No, in this case, that kind of restriction is not provided by the compiler. Just because the compiler will verify only the data types. Both are ints, both are primitive ints, so they can be compared. But the compiler is not providing the differentiating or the safety. The compiler is not providing the safety for the specific type. That means, can we call these constants? Can we call these attributes as constants? Can we call day underscore Monday as a constant? Can we consider day underscore Monday, this attribute, as a constant? Yes or no? Definitely yes. Any final static attribute of any class will be a constant. Just because the value will not be changed. Final static attributes will behave as a constant. That I have told many number of times. Final static attributes will behave as constants. Will be used as constants. Okay? So, day underscore Monday, day underscore Tuesday, these are used as constants. Now, are these constants type safe? Or day underscore Monday, day underscore Tuesday, Wednesday, January and February. These 5 are constants. Are these 5 constants type safe? Are these 5 constants type safe or not? They are not logically type safe. Just because months can be compared with weeks, weeks can be compared with years, anything can happen. So logically they are not type safe. But these types of things have caused problems in many applications. This type safe or this type unsafe, the type unsafe constants. These are not type safe, these are type unsafe constants. Or simply we can call this non-type safe constants. Anyway, these non-type safe constants has caused many problems in applications. Just because the compiler could not able to restrict them. Just because the compiler could not able to restrict them, it has caused problems in many applications. The non-type safe constants. So to overcome those problems, okay, and now are these constants under a group? Are these constants are under a group, or all the constants are under a entity? Are the months under a separate group? Are the days under a separate group? No. Months are not under a separate group or days are not under a separate group. All the constants are combined and they are put in a separate class JDK1 demo. So they are not grouped. This also has cross problems. Grouping, without grouping, one entity or one constant. February is at one place, January is at one place, okay, and Monday is at one place, Tuesday is at one place. Okay, this gathering of constants has also caused some problems. So the first objective is to make the constants type same. Okay, so that it cannot be combined with other logical types. That's the first thing that we need to achieve. The second thing is grouping the constants together. Okay, these are the problems that are faced before enums. But to avoid or to overcome those problems with final static constants, in JDK 105, enums were invented. Okay, enums were designed just because to avoid the problems of final static constants, to avoid the disadvantages of final static constants. Enums were designed. Okay. Now, what enums provide means enums will provide type safe constants and enums will provide grouping of constants. Okay. Enums will provide type safe constants as well as enums will provide grouping of constants. If you go for an interview will ask why I should go for enum. Why enums are used means enums are used to represent constants. If enums are used to represent constants, already final static constants are there. Final static attributes also can be used to represent constants. But why I should go for enum? If already final static attributes are there to represent the constant values. If already final static constants are there to represent the constant values, why again I should go for enums? Because final static constants are not type set, the first thing. Second is they are not grouped. Okay? To avoid those disadvantages with final static constants, we go for enums. Understood? Now let me have some enums. Let me remove the final static constants and let me have enums. I told clearly that enum is also a entity. Like a class and interface, there is a enum. Okay? Enum month. And we specify the enum constants. Like this. Just the enum constants of a enum should be in uppercase just because they like as constants. Any constant in Java should be in uppercase. Whether it is a final static constant or even enum constant, it should be in uppercase. Now let me remove this test method not required. Now we have designed an enum with the enum values January, February, March and April. Let me have another enum. day of week, which has Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Let me have three values: Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Okay. Now, each and every enum constant, each and every enum constant will act as an individual enum object. See, enum is an entity. For an entity, we can create an object, except for interface. For interfaces, we cannot create objects. But for a class and enum, objects can exist. Objects can exist for a class and enum, and each and every enum constant can act as a enum object, or each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. Each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. Each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. So, how we can refer enum constants means just the enum name dot the constant name, like this. And this is the enum object, and this is a reference to enum object. M is a reference to enum object January. And the enum objects will be fixed. The enum objects will be fixed. Okay? Only the enum constants can act as enum objects, and the number of enum objects are fixed anywhere. In any application, the number of enum objects will be fixed, just because each and every enum constant will act as an enum object. If we refer the enum object 100 times, 100 references to the enum will be created, but only the enum object will be fixed. Okay? What are the number of enum objects for month? 4. And that will be fixed if whether the application is accessed by 1000 or 1 lakh of users. Just because for enum, the objects will be the enum constants. We cannot create an object like this. This is not possible. We cannot create an enum object like this. This is not possible. But the enum constants, this is not possible. Creating an object to enum like this is not possible. But each and every enum constant will act as an enum object. Each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. Creation of enum objects using new operator is not possible. Creation of enum objects using new operator is not possible. Enum objects are fixed, and each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. So, this is not possible. So, if we try to compile this, enums may not be instantiated. Enum times may not be instantiated like this. Okay? So, if you want to make use of the enum object, just go for month dot January. Will be true or false? If M1 and M2 are pointing to the same object, then it will be true. If M1 and M2 are pointing to different objects, then it will be false. Then will it be true or false? True? Why do you think it is true? Just because even the reference is different, the enum object that we are pointing is same. The enum object will not change. Okay? Even if we have 100 references, the enum object will be the same. The enum constant will be the enum object. So this will become true. Now, let me have stay of it. Now will it be true or false? Will it be true or false? This will be a compile time error. I told that enums purpose is to go for type safe constants. If this is false, why should we come for enums? Our primary object to come for enums is to make the constants as type safe at the compiler level. This will give a compile time error. Enum day of week cannot be compiled with enum month. Okay? These two are incompatible types. This is it's telling that incomparable types, month and day of week. So now, are we making the constants as type safe at the level of compiler? Yes. We are achieving the type safety at the level of compiler itself. This is the basic advantage, and this is the basic purpose why we go for enums. Type safety of constants. Now the month cannot be compared with day. Day can be a day and month can be a month. Both cannot be compared. So that the type safety of constants can be achieved. Understood? And there is no limit for the number of constants in a enum. There can be any number of constants in a enum. Okay? There can be any number of constants in a enum. Even enums can have any of the members that are available for a class. Even can have any of the members that are available for a class. What are the members that are available for a class? Attributes, methods, constructors, initialization blocks. All these four members can be there even in a enum. All those members can be in a enum. All these four members, attributes, methods, constructors, initialization blocks can be there in a enum. Now, let me try to declare an attribute in enum. Okay, I equal to 10. Okay, now let us see what it gives. It gives some compile time error. Okay, why? I told that attributes are allowed in enum, but why this is giving a compile time error means, okay, attributes, a method or a constructor or initialization block, whatever the member that we define in enum, those members should be defined only after enum constants. For any enum, first all the enum constants should be defined, only then the remaining members should be defined. For a enum, first all the enum constants should be defined, only then the other members should be defined. For enum, first the enum constants should be defined, only after defining all the enum constants. Only after defining all the enum constants, then only we should define the remaining members. Now, what are the data types of I, J and K? What are the data types of I, J and K? It's not there. Since the data type is not there, what it will do? Will it give a compile time error or not? Since the data types are not there for I and J and K, will it give a compile time error or not? If there is a variable, definitely there should be a data type. There is no data type here for I, J and K. Now in this case, will it give a compile time error or not? The compiler will consider I as well as J as well as K, these as enum constants. Okay, so the compiler will not give any compile time error because of M2 equal to M3. We are comparing month with date. Let me not give this. Now it will not compile. Sorry, it will compile successfully. Just we were comparing month with date, so that it was giving a compile time error. Now it is not a compile time error, just because I, J and K are considered to be enum constants. Okay, up to the first semicolon, all of the things will be considered as enum constants. Up to the first semicolon, all the members are considered to be enum constants. Up to the first semicolon, all the members are considered to be enum constants. Up to the first semicolon in a enum, all the members are considered to be enum constants. Up to the first semicolon in enum, all the members will be considered as enum constants. Now, will you give a compile-time error? Now, will you give a compile-time error? Yes or no? Definitely you give a compile-time error, just because here after April there is a semicolon. Then these are not considered to be enum constant. These are considered to be normal identifiers. Identifiers without data type will be a compile-time error. So it's telling that some identifier is expected before I. Just because up to the first semicolon, these are considered to be enum constants. Now, if I keep semicolon here, now will it compile successful? Yes. Just because up to the first semicolon, they are considered to be enum constants. Now, I, j, and k are now considered to be enum constants. Then, if at least one comma is missing, then also it is a compile-time error. All the enum constants should be separated by commas. All the enum constants should be separated by commas. If at least one comma is missing, obviously it will be a compile-time error. All the enum constants should be separated by commas. Okay? So that it is giving a compile-time error. All the enum constants should be separated by commas. Now will you give a compile-time error? Will it give a compile-time error? No. Okay? This will not give a compile-time error. Okay? Having semicolon is not mandatory at the end of the enum constants. Now will it give a compile-time error? Will it give a compile-time error? Yes or no? At the end of the enum constants, it might be semicolon or it might be blank. It should not be comma. At the end of the enum constant, the last enum constant can be succeeded by either semicolon or blank, nothing. But it should not be comma. If it is comma means the compiler will expect another enum constant after that. But where it does not exist. The last enum constant can be succeeded either by nothing or it should be semicolon. Now what happens? What happens now?
April is the last.
April is the last. How do you consider that April is last? Because there is semicolon. The first semicolon is the end of the enum constants. After enum constants, it will think them as normal variables. Normal variables without data types are not valid. So after the first semicolon, all are considered to be normal variables. Okay? So it will be a compile-time error. Okay? Just because after semicolon, the remaining members in enum will be considered, okay, as variables. Okay? Not as variables, they will not be considered as enum constants. After the first semicolon, they will not be considered as enum constants. So that they will give a compile-time error. Understood? Now if I give semicolon here, now will it be compiled? If I give semicolon here, whether we give 10 or 20 semicolons, it's irrespective. After the first semicolon, the remaining things are not considered as enum constants. Understand? Now? Now what happens? Definitely this is a compile-time error. I told just now that any members in a enum should be declared only after enum constants. Are we declaring the entire after enum constant? No, we are declaring an attribute in the middle of enum constants, which is not a valid thing. So this will definitely give a compile-time error. Just because we have declared an attribute in between the enum constants, which is not a valid thing. Okay? Now let me write some more months. And let me make it here. Now, the variable is at the end of all the enum constants. After ending all the enum constants, we have declared a variable. After declaring all the enum constants, we have declared a variable. Now what happens? Will it be compile successful or this will give a compile-time error? Just because I told clearly that the first semicolon will indicate that it is a end of the enum constants. The first semicolon will indicate that it is a end of the enum constants. In an enum, the first semicolon indicates the end of the enum constants. But what is the end of the enum constant here? This will be considered as the end of the enum constant. But is this a valid syntax of enum? No. So it is a compile-time error. So after the last enum constant, it is the ideal thing to keep semicolon. It's an ideal thing to keep semicolon after the last enum constant. But if we keep like this, what happens? It will give a compile-time error. Just because we have declared a variable before the first semicolon. Until the first semicolon, okay, the compiler will consider that those are enum constants. But is this a syntax of enum constant? No. So that it is a compile-time error. Okay. Now I am not keeping any semicolon. Now will it give a compile-time error? Will it give a compile-time error? No. It will not be a compile-time error. Okay. Until the enum contains only enum constants. Until the enum contains only enum constants, we can avoid semicolon at the end. Until the enum contains only enum constants, we can avoid the semicolon at the end of the enum constants. But if there is any member other than the enum constant, definitely there should be a semicolon at the end of the enum constant. Then only we should start writing the members. Now this will be compiled successfully. Understood? Now this will be compiled very successfully. Just because the first semicolon will be considered to be the end of the enum constant. After the end of the enum constant, whatever we declare, they will follow the specific syntaxes. It will not be considered as the enum constant. A semicolon at the end of the enum constants is required only when we are declaring other members after the enum constants. If we are not declaring any other members after the enum constant, then semicolon is not required. Understood? Semicolon is required at the end of the enum constant only when we are declaring members other than the enum constants. Okay? What is the value? Will it be compiled successful? Will it be compiled successful or not? Compile them? Error. Why do you think it is a compile them error? Final attributes? Will not take? Did I tell I is a final attribute? Or did I tell January, February are final attributes? Did I tell that the enum constants are final attributes? Or did I tell that the attributes inside a enum are final by default?
It's not default.
Did I tell? Just please don't interrupt. I'm asking the question. After my question, please answer. Okay? Did I tell that attributes of a enum are final by default? Did I tell that the constants of a enum are final by default? Nothing. Then ask you. Then tell your view. Just please speak out.
A variable is not the public.
The variable?
Not the public. That's why we cannot access to the object.
The variable is not?
Int I is not the public. That's why we cannot.
Is it mandatory to have a public member to be accessed outside the class? If it is supposed to be accessed outside the package, then it should be public. To be accessed within the same package, public is not mandatory. Turn your notes with oops.
So the M1 reference is only pointing to the January object. It's impossible to assess that.
Now, can I consider I as an attribute for month enum? Can I consider I as an attribute of the enum month? Yes or no? Is it a static attribute or a non-static attribute? Non-static attribute. Now, can I consider this as an object to the enum? Can I consider the highlighted portion as the object of the enum? Yes or no? I thought clearly that each and every enum constant will act as a enum object. Now, is I a member to an object referred by M1? Yes or no? Definitely yes. That is yes. Obviously, it will be compiled and even executed successful. The attributes of the enum. How we can access the attributes of the enum means through enum constants. There are attributes of the enum. How we can? Let's consider like there is a class A and there is an attribute I. How we can access this attribute means by creating the object. But how we can access the members of the enum means by making use of the enum objects. But how we can create enum objects? We cannot create the enum objects. We can make use of the existing enum objects. That's what I am doing. Month M1 equal to month of January. I am accessing the existing enum object. Through the reference of the existing enum object, I am accessing the attribute. That's fine, right? So, this will be compiled. Okay, as well as executed successful. The value is 0. Understood? Now let's consider like now what is the value? Will it be true or false? Double equal to operator for primitives will verify. I don't expect you will think for this much time. Definitely this will be true. Just because, let's consider like there is an enum object January. So January enum object value will be 0. When for February enum object value will be 0. Okay? Let's consider like m1.I is equal to m2.I. For primitives it will take values. These are all the values same? 0 and 0. Both are same. So this will be true. Okay? This is true. Now let's consider that I have a class A. Class test. Okay? Now what is the value? What's the value? True or false? False. Just because each and every enum constant will have its own copy of I and T. So let's consider the first enum constant January has the copy of I and T. T will be referring to some object. Okay? Now February will have a separate constant of I, T. T will be referring to separate object. Now T1, T2. T1 equal to T2 will become true or false? Okay? So each and every enum constant will behave like a enum object. So that each and every enum constant will have a set of attributes of that enum. Each and every enum constant will have a set of attributes of that enum. If you see here, if I compile and execute the application, the output is false. Just because the output here is false. Just because the objects of the enum constants are different. Each and every enum constant will have its own copy of enum attributes. It behaves like a normal class in case of attributes.
Each and every object will have only the non-static attribute or all the attributes.
Each and every object will have
static attribute, that means static part is constant attribute or non-static attribute.
Only non-static attributes will be a part of the object. Okay? Static attributes will not be a part of the object. Now what is the value? Will it be true or false? Will it be true or will it be false? That means you forgot all the basics. Not even a single person remembered the basics. I told many times and many times that static members will be shared across the objects. Static members will be shared by all the objects. Static members of a class will be shared by all the objects of the class. Static members of an enum will be shared by all the members of the enum. If we refer m1.t or m2.t or m3.t, it will refer to the same object. Now previously, since t was non-static, it was for each and every object there was a specific copy. For each and every enum object there was a specific copy of t, test object. Now since T is a static. Now each and every enum object will have only I as specific. Now test object will be stored in the class area of a enum. Even enum will have a static area or a class area to store the static numbers. Okay? Except enum constant, the remaining things will be the same. For a class in the enum, the remaining behaviors will be the same for a class in the enum. So now what happens? Always enum objects will share the common static member. Understood? Each and every enum constant will act as an object, and each and every enum object will have its own copy of non-static attributes of the class. Okay? Each and every enum object will have its own copy of non-static attributes of that enum, the class enum. But the number of objects of enum are fixed. That's it. Okay, the number of objects of the enum are fixed. Okay, the number of the objects of enum are fixed and equal to the number of enum constants. But attributes can be there, constructors can be there, methods can be there. Any member, initialization blocks also can be there in enum. Any member that is possible in a class is possible in the enum. And the behavior of those members also will be the same. Okay? Non-static attributes of a class will be a part of the object of the class. In the same way, non-static attributes of a enum will be a part of the object of the enum. Static attributes will be shared by all the objects of a class. The same way, static attributes or static methods will be shared by all the objects of the enum. It will be the same, the concepts will be the same. Object orientation concepts will be the same whether we go for enum or a class. Okay? And even enums can have methods. With any access level. It's not like specific access level will be there. It can be accessed directly using the enum name. Like this. Since test is static, static member can be used using the entity name month.test. Okay, like this. But any member of a enum should be designed only after the enum constants. That's the rule. Okay, except that the remaining things, attributes, variables, or non-static static rules, all are the same for a class and enum. So it's executing the test method. Now what happens? What happens? Definitely this will be a compile error, just because test method is non-static and it cannot be accessed using the class as a reference or enum as a reference or simply entity as a reference. By using entity as a reference, we cannot access, okay, the method. So what we do is month dot, let's consider like, now can we access like this? Now can we consider this is a highlighted portion as a enum object? Can we consider the highlighted portion as a enum object? Yes. Enum object dot, this object will have temporary reference. Temporary reference dot test. So definitely this will be compiled and executed successfully. Just because this highlighted content, this will act as a enum object. And even we can have constructors. We can have constructors in a enum. It's possible to have constructors in a enum. Test class not necessary. It is possible to have a constructor in a enum. Okay? Now how many times the enum constructor is executed? How many number of times means? The number that is equal to the enum constants. Okay? Let's consider like we are using only one. Let's consider like we are using only one enum constant. Okay? Let me compile the application. How many times it is executed? 7 times. Now, when the enum objects are created, when the enum objects are created, when the enum objects are created means whenever the enum constant is used for the first time. Whenever the enum constant is used for the first time, then at that time itself all the enum objects are created. Whenever a enum constant is used for the first time, whenever a enum constant is used for the first time, then itself all the objects to enum constants will be created. All the objects of enum constants will be created. Now, Then what is the output? What's the output? What's the value? What is the output printed? First, what we are doing is we are accessing the enum constant month.January. When we use or when we access the enum constant of a enum for the first time, then itself all the enum objects are created. When we are creating all the enum objects, when we are accessing the enum for the first time, then what happens? For all the enum objects, the corresponding constructor will be executed. So when we access month.January, at that time itself, 7 times the constructor will be executed. Then hello, then we access February. Are the constructors executed again? No, just because already the objects are created and the existing objects are used. When we access the enum constant for the first time, then itself all the enum constant objects will be created. For the second time onwards, the existing enum constants will be reported. So, the output is 7 times enum constructor hello and hi. So, M1 is already defined. So, sorry, here M1 is a duplicate variable, duplicate local variable. So, let me give other name and go to the classes, execute the application. 7 times enum constructor hello hi. So, whenever we access the enum constant for the very first time, then itself all the objects of enum will be created. There are no constants. Okay? If there are no constants, okay, what is the purpose of the enum? If there are no constants in enum, what you will do with enum? Why? It's not required, right? It's like coming to the university and going without a certificate. Useless. Okay? So, enums without constants is a undesirable approach. Okay? We need not to explain in that manner. For that purpose, if there are only attributes or only methods, then we go for a class. Why should we go for enum? Enum has a specific meaning, so that we should go for enum only when we want types of constants. There are no constants, definitely we should use class for that purpose.
So we can say enums will be more enums will have more features than classes.
That's not sure. That's not correct thing.
So
Class will have its own features. Enums will have its own features. We cannot tell that enum will have advantageous features when compared to a class. Class should be used at its purpose and enum should be used at its purpose. Enum should be used only when we want to represent constants. Okay? And class should be used anywhere where we have logic. Okay?
So other things are there in the classes, there are also enums. So we can go for class.
That we will see. After the completion of enums, okay, you can understand why I can't go for a enum for the purposes of the class. Okay? Right now we are in the middle, at the end we can understand. Okay? Yes. Still, it will take half an hour to 40 minutes to complete enums. Okay. We'll discuss some more things about enums in the next session. Okay. Still, there are many things. The constructors of the enums, initialization blocks, how we can go for finals, static, and all. Okay. Several things are there in the enum to discuss. Once the enums are completed, most probably we'll try to complete enums as well as annotations in the next class, if possible, and if time supports us, we'll try to complete them in the next class. And after that, I forgot to discuss one thing, like we have a concept named Java documentation, Java doc. Okay, I have forgot that, and even we have the concept class path, and to make a executable jar file. How to make use of a class path, and how to go for a executable jar file, how to create executable jar file through the application that we are ready to discuss. We'll discuss them, and then we'll go for file handling. Okay. Eventually, if I miss any of the concepts, just remind me. Okay. Okay. Let's